Hello and welcome to the Trading Card Lobby episode 1. I'm super happy and super excited about that we just sitting together with a couple of people where I want to introduce firstly and talking about of our most beloved topic, Magic the Gathering, on the future also on trading cards, but later more about that. I would start with Katha. Hello to Katha. She's our, I would say, semi-pro gamer in this round. So having a few great successes in Magic the Gathering, bigger tournaments. And what I know, and where I got beaten as well by a creative elemental deck or just a tribal deck in often cases. We have our storyteller directly from the States. It's Ryan from Magic Arcanum. I'm super happy that Ryan is here because he tells a lot of great stories about stories from Tales and from Magic the Gathering, so make it a little bit more chaotic. Then we have our great and very, how can I say that? It is a super creative artist. It's Kai, so from Sabotarix. And lastly, we have a judge here because I'm talking too much and I need someone who said, no, I would say I'm judging this today. This is our judge, Dan. And lastly, myself, I'm Patrick. I'm doing, a few things, but let's talk about that later. So I would give over the topic to Dan, and then we can start with the first episode. And we are very happy to welcome all our guests in the chat.
All right. Thanks for having all of us, Patrick. We are here today to talk about Modern Horizons 3, the upcoming Magic expansion. The third one in a series that has caused some stir in various parts of Magic in the past. And with what we know about this newest installation, we can already expect a few things. The first spoilers have just come in this past weekend at MagicCon Chicago. I was just a few hundred meters away on the other end of the hall, judging in the ticketed play area when those happened, and I heard the screams and the applause and the excitement from the mana stage where those cards were revealed. So yeah, let's first of all talk about some of the cards that we've already seen from this set. Do you all have any favorites, any of the new cards that excite you most if you think about them?
A lot. So the first thing that I saw with what reminds me, what you said also about in the hall in Chicago at the MagicCon, was the reveal of the fetch lands. So the onslaught fetch lands are back, and it reminds me exactly of that announcement that we had with Cards of Tarkir. I think it was also on a Grand Prix. And then they announced also and shown the fetch lands and people jumping around like on a Super Bowl. So it was like, yeah, we're getting back the fetch lands. Yeah, and that was before just we get the it was. So I think the story of the fetch lands is also crazy if you think about that. We're waiting so many years normally to getting a reprint of an absolutely core card cycle that we normally need for a couple of formats. But so for me, fetch lands, sure, that was my main thing.
Yeah, it was good. Yeah, I think it's always been almost been like 10 years at this point since Console Talk here. I think like the set came out like what, like 2015 maybe or so.
2014 actually.
2014.
Yeah.
14,
Yeah,
14
damn.
September.
Yeah. So basically exactly 10 years. Like I mean, people need fetch lands, right? In literally every format. I feel like be even in Commander. Like I see it in Commander where sometimes people are a little too lazy to shuffle their deck too often, you know. So like I also refrain from using fetch lands in my Commander decks for the most part. But I think as competitive deck goes, like, you know, mana fixing is key, and just like super excited to see those fetch lands. With all these reprints of those fetch lands though, I think it gets a little dicey maybe to like see the different artworks, right? Like, you know, like now Winds with Tea, for example, has like so many different artworks that it's kind of hard to see what's going on, especially if your opponent plays like really quickly maybe, because some of those, like I gotta tell you, like I think the OG fetch lands looked really iconic to me. Like the artworks, like they're like just so simple and clean, and everyone really knows what's going on with them. And the same for the KTK Kantotakia fetch land as well. The new ones also look really nice, I gotta say, but they, except the Bloodstained Maya, the other ones don't really have a strong character to them, and that's why I could maybe see some, maybe some delays, some issues maybe in some games. But overall, I'm super
I
super
think
happy.
so. For me, every time I see wooded foothills, it's like me seeing the mountain from another perspective of the of the mountain. So it's every time nearly the same artwork, but on any of the side of the mountains where you're staying and looking through that. So I think this is the only fetch land that ever has nearly the same artwork. But I saw also on Twitter yesterday where Ryan reposted, "Yay, we get small snow-covered wastes." What about that, Ryan? Was it ironic or was it a good thing?
I was kind of curious, since we know this set is going to have some Eldrazi presence as well, and the wastes are so associated with them, and there's been a lot of people asking, snow covered, that's another important type of land, and if only I could fit that into my Eldrazi commander deck somehow. So they're just checking all of the boxes here and really making this into a product that addresses the story side of it, and it is a lore appropriate card. There is a region of Zendikar that is known for having snow on it, and it would have been turned into wastes when the Eldrazi were there. So it's nice. It makes me feel warm and fuzzy inside because it's approved by the story. It fits into the decks that want it, and it's another card you're just gonna want to open in Modern Horizons 3. So great inclusion on behalf of Wizards of the Coast for sure.
So warm feelings with a snow-covered land. Yeah. Sorry, Katha. Let's
Yeah.
go for it.
Wondering if there's already a card that you would want in your colorless Eldrazi deck that cares about snow theme. Because I mean, I'm also excited for it, and I'm also excited if there are cards that will actually synergize with both colorless mana and snow mana. But
Yeah.
I was wondering if there's currently something, because I don't play as much Commander and don't know as many Eldrazi cards, I guess.
I mean, this
I
land
don't know
kind of.
any off the top of my head, but I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. I mean, this land kind of reminds me of like the Eldrazi winter. Like when Eldrazi came out, and like we didn't had any snow-covered wastes back then, but Eldrazi was such a dominant deck. Can't really say the same thing now, maybe because like Legacy has changed so much. But we definitely needed the snow-covered waste, like I don't know, like 8 years ago when it really happened. Like when at the Pro Tour, when everyone went nuts with those Thought Nazis and Reality Smashes.
Oh yeah, so it's basically a subtle acknowledgement that Eldrazi Winter was real.
Yeah.
But off the top of my head, Kata, I can't think of any currently played Eldrazi cards that would care about snow. So yeah, I'm also really excited to see if maybe that crossover becomes a bigger theme in the set.
This might be a good one to field to the people watching. If you're on the chat and you have some ideas, fire off in the comments there so that we can, jump on those ideas and kind of explore them here on the show. But if you're watching and you have that light bulb and you know that the perfect card for those snowy wastes, let's hear about it, right?
Yeah, so I think one of the main themes that will change is about the meme. Normally, I'm creating 15 squirrel to beat your Emrakul. Now we will have something like I create 15 red 1/1 gremlin tokens to block your, or I create 12 1 gremlin tokens to block your 12/12 Emrakul. Because now we have a new Emrakul, and I think this can be something for modern. Kata, what do you think about the new Emrakul that he gaining control of all target players, so of all creatures from target player? Is it more for you a commander card, or do you think it could be a competitive one?
Personally, I'm not quite sold on it yet. I don't see a deck that wants to discard it to pay the madness cost of six colorless, I think.
Yeah, it's
Mhm.
expensive.
And
Yeah.
I think the effects of the other Eldrazi is more powerful than gaining control of all creatures and leaving the battlefield. Yeah, so you basically will never really get her to leave the battlefield again unless you have like Otavara, I guess, or board wipe, but the dodges all enchantment based or instant based or sorcery based targeted removal. But I feel that the effect sounds not as strong. So I don't know if like Tron will decide to ditch other top end for this card. And I'm
Yeah,
I'm kind of unsure if it fits anywhere there.
yeah. I think what was the 11-11? I think this is beside the old school Emrakul. I think Emrakul, Kozilek. What was the third one? I forgot the name.
Ulamog?
Yeah, thank you. The 11-11 Ulamog. I played a couple of years in Modern Tron. At that time, the 11-11 Ulamog came out. I think this is, for me, the most powerful not to combo in. Yeah, you can say that the Tron lands are combo as well. No, it's not. It's like I think
Or which one?
yeah, exactly. That one who cut cards from the deck, and I think that one is super powerful.
Oh, that's Ulamog the Ceaseless Hunger and costs only 10.
It was 10, so it was, but it has 11-11 attack, right?
No, it's 10-10. It's a 10 mana, 10-10, exiles to permanents, indestructible. When it attacks, then each player the defending player exiles the top 20 cards. And that seems much more powerful than the new Emrakul, I think.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
but that's the reason why I don't play Tron anymore, because I don't know how the mana cost of my cards are.
You don't have to. You tap lands and say, I cast this, and your opponent will say, okay, I guess.
Yeah, sure.
And also like a lot of new cards, this new Emrakul just has a lot of words on it, so you can just like ballpark it, whatever it does. But one specific line that I think is interesting, and also interesting from a competitive point of view, is protection from spells and from permanents that were cast this turn, because that seems like a very narrow and specific protection, but actually it covers a lot of things.
Protection from Leyline Bite.
Yeah, solitude,
Yeah.
you know, those kind of things.
Yeah.
Right, like I mean, people will always kind of find ways to remove like Eldrazi's. Like, you know, it's just difficult, right? It's not impossible. Like this one in particular is I think pretty hard to remove, but the upsides are not as overwhelming than in comparison to the other ones, right? Like, it doesn't draw any cards, for example. It doesn't have any Annihilator. It doesn't have any not a single trigger on attack, for example, which is just really uncommon maybe for Eldrazi this size. And the first and probably like the most appealing part of this Eldrazi, of the gaining control of all creatures target player controls, is such a, I mean, this screams for Commander, I think, because like Commander is all about board presence, right? And like people just play a lot of stuff on in the first couple turns. You know, if you just take the whole army, that's usually game over. But in like Modern or Legacy, it really doesn't happen all that often, I think. Like people might just play like a creature, maybe 1, 2, 3 maybe. And I don't know, that's about it.
Yeah, just to bring it over, it that heralds the end. So I think now we have a lord for Eldrazi's. What do you think about that? Sorry, Dan, I interrupted you.
Oh, I just wanted to ask one more question regarding this Emrakul to our resident teller of tales here.
Hit me.
So the last time we saw Emrakul, she was imprisoned in the moon.
Yes.
So what is that all about? Does this mean Emrakul is free now?
It does not. So that's one of the biggest misunderstandings perhaps I've seen in reaction to the announcements from Modern Horizons 3. These sets exist outside of the continuous story. So what we see here is not necessarily connected to what is going on in our present. We can get cards that show characters who have been dead for a very long time. We can get cards that show locations that don't exist anymore. And in particular with those legendary creatures who are going to flip into their planeswalkers, which we haven't even talked about yet, but we've got like a Johnny in there, but that is representing him back on Alara when his spark first ignited. And even though he is presently suffering from losing his spark along with a lot of other people after the Phyrexian drama, this is a moment from years ago. So that card can exist and it can show us what life was like for him then without relating to what we just saw happen in March of the Machine. Likewise, this version of Emrakul seems to exist during the attack on Innistrad, the reference to the madness mechanic being kind of a mechanical link there. But that doesn't mean that she's out of the moon as of right now. This isn't giving us new information for the story. It is just kind of backfilling and kind of saying, hey, you saw the Gatewatch fight Emrakul, and we had the Promised End, and that was the version that they fought in the story when that set was the newest thing. But if you looked just a little off camera, they could have been fighting her looking like this, or this is how she appeared, 2 days before Jace showed up and did his thing. So it's just capturing a moment we already knew about, but from a different angle. And so it's not that she has been released from the moon. It is more of a, hey, remember this part of the story? Here's how that card could have been designed if we were doing something a little different back then. Does that answer your question?
Yeah,
So that
absolutely.
means
I love the mechanical link with madness. I didn't catch that at all.
so that means Modern Horizon 3 is like a multi-verse. So if you looking through what we have at the moment, cinematic universes and situations, parallel universes. So the Modern Horizon sets are likely that so this is something that could be, this is something that happened, this is something that is in present at the moment.
Right.
Yeah.
So to me, it's more of like a time machine. We can jump back through any point in Magic's known history and take a peek in there and see what Ajani looked like before his spark ignited, or what Tamio, what caused her spark to ignite. I believe there's going to be a cycle of much like we had in Magic Origins in 2016, where we had the 5 legendary creatures who flipped into planeswalkers under certain circumstances. Seems to be what we're getting here, with Ajani and Tamio being the known 2. And I have some theories about how they're going to fill out the rest of that cycle, which we'll talk about in a minute. But again, we know there's going to be a Tamio card in this set. But we also know that in the story right now, she's dead and she's a ghost. So how can those both be true, right? Well, this is a time in Tamio's life when she was still alive, and we're just kind of backtracking to that so we can pluck a card and you can put it into your deck today. But that doesn't mean that she's alive in the story any more than Emrakul's released or whatever. And this has been the trend for all of the Modern Horizons sets so far. We have had characters appearing in those sets who were not part of the story happening in the major sets that were coming out at the same time. So this is
Like
tradition at this
Yakmot
point.
and Sarah, and I think Sarah was in the
Yeah.
first set, Yakmot was in the first set. We had Urza as a creature.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There were a lot of those actually.
Yeah.
And
that I'm
also
thinking
what
of.
I figured out is Emrakul the first card that appears as the second time as a set symbol. So we had Eldritch Moon, there was Emrakul, and it was the great mystery clue finding about what is the set symbol. Oh wait, it's Emrakul. Yeah, okay. If someone read any who worked with H.P. Lovecraft at the first spoilers we saw, okay, yeah, it's a big Eldritch monster. So let's go for it. Now, because I thought, hey, do we get something back from Kaldra? Because firstly I saw a helmet and I said, hey, and then I saw the full art version of Emrakul, and that is just exactly the set symbol.
Yeah.
I think what do you think? I think this is also, hey, we now have a second Eldrazi set, or this is the first Masters Eldrazi set.
I mean, it's supposed to be an Eldrazi. Eldrazi is a theme of the set, so I'm pretty sure the set symbol is supposed to be Emrakul. Or
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Or
technically,
maybe Emrakul did a helmet.
If you count Kaldra was on 3 sets, but that's when we only had the individual pieces, with the sword as the Mirrodin symbol, the shield as Darksteel, and the helmet as Fifth Dawn.
Oh, they were so
back
good.
in the day.
And still we don't have a token for Kaldra. There's no token printed as Kaldra. Kai, do it.
I really wish they made this token when they released Kaldra Complete, to be like on an actual Kaldra token and not on a germ. But
yeah, that would have been cool.
Xbox wouldn't have fit that.
yeah.
Use living weapon as nicely, but
100%.
What about Priest of Titania? Will that bring elves back in Modern? Kai, you playing a lot of elves in Legacy. What do you think about Priest of Titania in Modern?
Yeah, so Priest of Titania. I mean, this card is originally from like Ursa's Saga, I think. Like this card
Yes.
is super old, and mostly sees plays in like what, like in pre-modern or in pre-modern Commander maybe. Just having like a really strong mana dork for 2 mana is not the worst. Like and it might be somewhat playable. Like elves was a deck to beat in the past, like like many years ago. And in modern, it was pretty viable. I don't know about the power level in Legacy, because like Legacy is a completely different animal. It's probably like a little too fast for something like Priest of Titania, and there are like other cards like Gaia's Cradle and other cards that produce so much mana. But it definitely gives hope. I think like cheating on mana is one way how you can win a game, right? Like you see it with Tron lands, for example. Like Storm cheats on mana, lands that tap for multiple mana sources, for multiple mana, and Priest of Titania just does exactly that. However, there are also things like Orcish Bowmasters in Modern, and other things like Ren and 6, like things that really just take care of those little 1/1s. So I'd be kind of curious. I'm not too optimistic on elves, but on the other hand, like I don't want to let all the elves fans down here. I think this is a brilliant reprint, and it wouldn't probably hurt any format.
You know what? You
Katha,
just
question
mentioned
for you.
something.
Oh, sorry.
I
No,
just
go
like
ahead.
what I like what he said about cheating on mana, and that kind of triggered something in my mind here that I just realized regarding that new Emrakul card that we were talking about. That one doesn't have a trigger on it that will shuffle it back into your deck if it ends up in the graveyard, right?
Right.
So if you had a way to discard it or self-mill it or whatever, does that make this Emrakul one of the better reanimation targets if you were going to try to cheat it in Modern, since you couldn't do that before with some of the other versions? I mean, we were assuming we were going to hard cast it or maybe use the madness to kind of get it out for 6 or so. But if you could get it out for like 5 mana or 4 coming out of your graveyard with some of the reanimation stuff, does that make that version of Emrakul better? Because now you have a really sticky threat, even if it doesn't steal a lot of creatures when you play it. I mean, you still have a very dangerous creature that you effectively get to cheat out. Does that change anyone's
Yeah.
impression of that card now that I think of it that way?
Yeah, it's definitely. I think it's a good point, right? Like it's definitely probably like the largest thing you can reanimate in, and in comparison to other things, right? Like I think the hottest card to reanimate are Atraxa, Grand Unifier, and Griselbrand. Obviously, like those cards gain a lot of value to, like, they add so much card advantage, and they also somewhat affect the board. And Emrakul doesn't really do that quite as good, but it is basically it has like this super strange hexproof ability, right? And it's big, and I think it also flies. I think it flies.
Yeah.
So
I was about to say, like, Katha, if you play someone in Modern who plays a reanimation strategy and they bring out this Emrakul, are you glad they did it?
Yeah, that's what I wanted to say. I don't think so. It's a cast trigger, so you don't get. So you basically just reanimated a 12 for a flyer. That if they get rid of it and you happen to have any other creature, your board is just gone. Which probably, because you would remove it with a board wipe, the board would be gone anyway. But I think there are like 2 reanimation things you do in Modern. One is Goyo's Vengeance, which actually cares about a legendary creature, but you use it with the other Emrakul that shuffles into your deck, just with a trigger on this deck because it's an instant. And that's much more powerful because then you've got it attacking with Annihilator of 4. And the other thing that people do is like persisting, and persist is non-legendary creature, right? So you can't cheap persist it for 2, like you can with, for example, Archon of Cruelty. And therefore, I think if someone would play a reanimator deck, I think they would definitely go for a reanimation strategy that costs 2 mana. And in this case, for Goyo's Vengeance, you've got better legendary creatures, and persist does not work. And I don't think that's the best thing to reanimate, personally.
But
I don't know if that's...
But I think the
if you have go.
no. Like I think like reanimating Emrakul is not, it's not terrible, right? Like it's definitely up there. It's probably not the best ever, but I would much rather look at the discard, like the madness thing on that card itself. Like it's there for a reason, and
Right.
obviously they're like colorless decks are usually not the best in enabling discard effects, but there are a lot of artifacts that kind of do like a little looting effect, for example, and some of them like don't even require mana. So like since you want to smooth out your draws in those decks anyway, like there might be a world where you play like a couple of like really cheap looting effects. Like, you know, a card that comes to my mind, for example, is like something like Currency Converter, or there are probably like many more. And you can
Key to the City, is that one I'm thinking of?
Which one?
I don't know. Key to the City from.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Right.
It also makes it unblockable, right?
Yeah.
That's what it needed.
I mean, we already
playable, right? Currency Converter is just a legacy playable card.
I think so, yeah. So like I was not referring to a specific format here, but like in general, right? Like if I think probably the strength of this, because this Emrakul is kind of quote unquote underwhelming in comparison to all the other Eldrazi's, but it has the upside of basically you know, just being in play for like the little cost of just 6 mana, right? Like that's crazy cheap for an Eldrazi this size. So I was just wondering if there's like any way how to like legally cheat it into play, and you even get the cost trigger if you go Madness, which is I think is pretty sweet. I mean, like, you know, like Magic people are smart, right? Like they gotta figure out something, right?
If it can be broken, we'll find a way to do it.
100%, yeah, 100%.
I think the madness thing could be the only accessible way for this card to make it unique. So we don't know what we're getting more about Eldrazi stuff. We don't know about how many cards we're getting that can be cheating in, like another version of the Ortholands or something like that. So, but mainly I think there will be an enabler card like a small Eldrazi with low mana cost who said, discarding card and doing X or whatever, to have the idea to bring Emrakul. Maybe it's also someone, and that brings me to the question from earlier this week. We now have a Lord for Eldrazi, so we have something that reduces the costs, and giving all colorless, is it Eldrazi spells or creatures?
Which is
other
7
colorless
or
creatures.
greater. Yeah, and all colorless creatures +1/+1. So, and this for 1 and a waste. And often what I realized that, so especially for maybe newer players, there's a couple of cards that producing colorless mana like the Painlands. So it's not only just that you're needing waste, so there's a lot of other cards. Remembering when the waste symbol is introduced a couple of years ago, that we have to re-rule a couple of cards because they produce a colorless mana, and for the commander players, Soul Ring producing 2 colorless mana. So there's a lot of ways to bring in the early stage in commander, I think easier. But for modern, I think that heralds the end, maybe with a combination of something discarding a colorless spell to doing getting a profit out of it, and then bring in Emrakul as like a finisher card could be a thing. So, but in the end, we will see. So, never thought it was last set where we get the reveal of Ragavan at the beginning. Yeah, I know a week later, but a week later is not a beginning. Ragavan was spotted as the most powerful card of the set. But I think the elementals at the beginning, no one ever thought that this would be so impactful on the meta. There was a couple of people, but all the elementals was in the first weeks super cheap instead of, I think, what was it? The green one? The green one, oh no, Solitude was the first one, was more expensive, right? But the rest was super cheap.
Reef was very expensive because, yeah, it was the most broken elemental of all in the beginning, or at least what I read on Reddit at the time. And Fury was the worst elemental of them all. It was like,
yeah,
fully
now it's banned.
and useless, basically useless. Yeah.
Talking
So,
about
yeah.
the elementals, we also got a new spell that can be cast without paying its mana cost, which is Flare of Cultivation. And I believe I'm smelling a cycle here.
Like
Interesting.
Force of Negation cycle.
Kind
Well,
of.
the cycle, just a free spell cycle, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's
So sacrificing, yeah.
it's nice that it's non-token creature, because otherwise you have like decks with Kalni Garden that can just put a token into play with their land and then have a token to sack for it. And depending on what the other colors do, if it's some very powerful effect and you can just sacrifice like whatever token randomly was produced there, it's probably better that it's non-token, but it probably will also make it obviously worse, right?
Yeah.
Will
I mean-
Flare of Cultivation bring Omnat back in Modern?
You mean
Sorry, so our landfall as a more powerful cycle, because I think bringing for free 2 lands in play is not so bad for landfall. Okay, it's not so powerful, so let's go on.
Basically cultivate, right?
It is pretty much exactly cultivate, only that you can free cast it by sacrificing a creature. And one of my friends who has, at least for some time, played Amulet Titan decks in Modern, has been really excited about finally getting some use out of his Arboreal Grazers with this card.
Oh, sick! Yeah.
Yeah, I can definitely see that.
That's cool. That's cool. Like it works under things like Blood Moon, for example. They can get a basic, you know. I dig that quite a bit. Yeah, I think like speaking of legacy, like people have been super excited about sacrificing Veteran Explorer to this, you know, to basically just like ramp like crazy on as soon as turn 1, and you know you just start the game with like what, like 1, 2, 4 lands in play and 1 in hand. That can kind of go out of hand. But yeah, I really like how this gives green, like Tron or Cloud Post or Amulet Titan decks like an out to things like, you know, Blood Moon, for example, back to basics, things like that, right?
The question is, I'm not super familiar with the land bases of these decks, but how many basic lands do they actually play?
I mean, now 2.
Probably. I mean, most, or at least I don't know how it's in Legacy, but in Modern you got some amount of basics to play around Blood Moon if your deck will basically die to Blood Moon.
Mm-hmm.
Or if your deck plays Blood Moon, you need to not moon yourself out of the game.
Are you playing Merfolk? F10.
Well, I will go out on a limb here and say that this card will definitely Nazi play in Merfolk.
Maybe the blue one.
There is Simic Merfolk, and you can sacrifice your weird 1-drop. I think there's Simic Merfolk that plays the Explorer 1/1 that explores, and then.
Oh, I did not know that.
I don't really think it would be played in Merfolk, but also I wouldn't to somebody slotting it in there.
Kai, it's the time again to put out Merfolk. Let's do that. Yes, also, so small story about that. So if I'm going to tournaments, I every time looking to play something weird, budget, and every time I'm going to Kai and said, "Hey, now today I'm playing this deck. How was your day? 0-3, but I had a lot of fun." Ryan, question about the artworks. So very often in Magic sets, we saw that artworks spoiled a couple of things. And if we look in, for example, to the Fetchland artworks, I realize that we see Ixalan, we see something from Phyrexia, then Zendika on Wooded Foothills. So Bloodstainmire maybe for Phyrexia, Wooded Foothills look for me like Zendika, Windswept Heath look a little bit like Ixalan. Polluted Delta is Polluted Delta, like every time. And Flooded Strand is the Lion King. So what do you think? Do you get a crossover between Lorcana and Magic the Gathering with the Lion King card of Flooded Strand? Now we have Mario Kart with Flooded Strand and now the Lion King with Flooded Strand. Great.
Yeah, I hope so. My 8-year-old daughter would definitely start playing Magic if she could also play some princesses in there and stuff. So that'd be a fun crossover. I'll take it. I'm trying to look a little more closely at Flooded Strand now and see if I can put my finger on where this might be. Some of these rock kind of formations. Oh, it says right in the flavor text, once a prosperous Vantris town, now swept clean and reclaimed by the waters of the wilds. This is Eldraine. So that's an
Yeah,
easy
makes
one
sense.
actually.
Yeah, I
Oh,
looked to the
actually,
full artworks.
Ah,
in-
and
interesting.
wooded
All of them
wooded
except
foothills is Kaldheim. Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
now that you mentioned the flavor text, all of them except Bloodstained Mire mention the plane that they're on. Interesting.
Hmm.
Yeah, maybe because the Martyr Machines happens between all worlds, and this could be the graveyard for the Phyrexia.
Yeah, sort of a leftover of the invasion that failed, and you're just kind of
Yeah,
seeing how the
Oh,
land
that's
suffers.
and also crazy if you look into the basic lands, we have the 3 big Eldrazi's, and we
Yep.
have that so Emrakul on Swamp, on Island it's Kozilek, Ulamog on Mountain, and the other 2 is on Plains. Is it from the new Eldrazi deck that we had in Commander Masters? I think,
uh,
or is it
hmm.
Ulamog again? Or do I misunderstand that this is Ulamog and on Mountain there's another one?
I think you're right in that it is different characters on each of the basic lands. I don't
Yeah.
think it's Ulamog twice. It seems to be most likely that commander character whose name escapes me. So,
Yeah.
see if I can look it up
And
real
on
quick.
Forest? Forest. Yeah, and on Waste we don't have one because they
Forest
were already there.
Forest does look a bit like Kozilek, but it's missing the crown thing.
Yeah, and Kozilek is on Island in the background.
Yeah, exactly. And there he does have the crown.
Yeah, is it, so if that betray? No. Wait, let me check.
I would agree that the one on the mountain looks like the commander card, which is called Zulodok.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe on the Forest we will have a second Titan in the set that will be revealed.
Oh, and I mean a new one.
Yeah. So like in the what we have in the Commander deck, so maybe this is also a new Titan. So let's see about that.
Is it
And
story
yeah,
for Zulodok? How he just I know it's off topic. It's not Modern Horizon 3, but is basically Zulodok another Eldrazi Titan? So like on the same level as the three others?
It's another legendary Eldrazi, and there are not many of those. So some people are calling it like an honorary Titan, but as far as being an actual Eldrazi Titan that we have seen appear on multiple planes, not yet. But that's because we haven't had a lot of story for Zul'Adok. They only appeared in a commander product and not part of the actual written stories anywhere. So it's kind of hard to say for certain. But it is very possible that this Horizon set does introduce another Titan because there's nothing in the lore that says that there can't be more than these 3. In fact, characters like Ugin have speculated that there are many of these out there in the multiverse, and we've luckily only had to fight 3 of them so far, but there could be more out there that are as powerful as Emrakul or less, or maybe more. We just don't know at this point.
So
mm,
here's another story speculation, based on something that you said earlier, Ryan, that the transforming creatures into planeswalkers when they gain their spark being a play on what we've seen in Magic Origins.
Yes.
One thing that I've seen people be a bit disappointed about Magic Origins was there was no Ugin card, but apparently he did play some role in the lore with that set. How likely do you think, with the Eldrazi making a comeback, a colorless theme in the set, and this happening, we might actually see a transforming Ugin?
You know, I just had to check over my shoulder and make sure you're not reading my notepad right behind me, because that is something I had written down to talk about. Right. So Magic Origins gave us a cycle of 5 single-colored legendary creatures who became iconic planeswalkers. Later on, we got a standalone Nicol Bolas legendary creature that flipped into his planeswalker. And so for a while now, we have been wondering if his twin Ugin would eventually get a matching card to kind of complete that symmetry. And this does seem like a great place to put one in if you already have support for colorless characters like the Eldrazi and Ugin's connection to them through the stories. I could definitely see a version of Ugin in here being a colorless legendary dragon on one side, and then his spark ignites and he flips over and becomes another colorless planeswalker version like we've seen from him in the past. I absolutely would not be surprised if that ends up being one of the cards in here. Yeah.
Nice. That there would be, that would be kind of like a great setup to make like maybe the marquee card of the set, if you will. I mean, to be fair, if we want to call Ragavan the standout card from Modern Horizons 2, that one might have been unexpected from speculations before seeing the set. But for this one, Ugin is kind of in this nice crossover where the story aligns with the themes of the set, and also
Mhm.
we have seen both Ugin and these double-faced planeswalkers being very powerful in Magic. I think at the time, Jace Rin's prodigies saw a lot of play. At least I remember a lot of tournaments that that I judged around the time where I saw that card.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
would
he
be
was like the
interesting.
Shieldred of his day. He was like $80, $90. And those are American dollars, by the way. Sorry, I know. They were very expensive. I remember Jace was a chase card from that era. You're right.
All
So
right.
meanwhile, I just starting to look back to the fetch lands. So we have Kamigawa, we have Kaldheim, we have something outside of the universe where we with Bloodstained Mire. So maybe we don't see any Phyrexian cards in the set. But do we getting Kaldheim? Do we getting Ixalan? Do we getting so Ixalan makes sense maybe about also the no, so wait, there was no elves in Ixalan, right? There was vampires, merfolk, and dinosaurs. So the Polluter said Towashi, so it's Kamigawa.
Yep.
Winds of Teeth, what we already said, is Ixalan. So do you think that we will get reprints from that sets back to, or new inspired card and legends from that sets, or from the eras, from the canon, as new creatures maybe never printed before, like we had with Sarah, Yagmoth, and so on. But I think now they're a newer generation, so I think the first Kamigawa set is now also nearly 20 years old. So
It's possible, but this type of set, they try to cast a very wide net and represent as many different things as they can. So, like, Scurry of Gremlins is from Kaladesh. Priest of
yeah,
Titania, that's a reprint, but that's Dominaria. Ajani is going to represent Alara. So I don't know that we're going to see like a whole bunch of cards representing Kaldheim or Ixalan or whatever. In fact, the set might have already been filled with other planes, and they said, well, the only way we can really get in a reference to some of our more popular places like Eldraine or Kaldheim, we'll just put them in the flavor text on these really exciting lands. And that way, if you're a fan of that plane, there is at least something in this set for you. But I wouldn't read so much into it that I would think, well, they mentioned Kaldheim on Wooded Foothills, so we're gonna get another Tyvar card because he's a big guy on Kaldheim. I don't know if it's going to be that much of a connection between what's on these lands and what's in the
okay.
rest of the set.
One more thing that I wanted to point out before we move on from the cards that have already been revealed is Lelia the Blade Reforged. I don't know anything about the story surrounding her, but I know that she is a very mechanically interesting card. because one of her abilities is whenever one or more cards are put into exile from your library and or your graveyard, put a +1/+1 counter on Lelia. And what our viewers might not know necessarily, unless they face off against this card in Commander regularly, is that Lelia actually gets one counter per card you exile for effects like Cascade, which isn't immediately obvious because you might think, oh, we're doing Cascade, so we're exiling a lot of things, and this says one or more. But no, this effect actually refers to uh, each time that one or more cards is exiled as one action, and Cascade exiles a card, looks if you cast it, and if not, then it exiles another. So it's separate counters getting put on there, and the only time that gets reduced is for effects that say, for example, exile 10 cards from your library. If you get hit by the aforementioned Ulamog that exiles a bunch of cards from your library, that will only get you one counter, unfortunately. But yeah, as we know, Cascade mechanics are pretty much on top of the metagame in Modern right now. So I'm pretty curious to see if this is a card that might see play in that environment. So mostly, Katha, as you are probably our most experienced Modern player here, what do you think?
If the question is if Layla will be played in Cascade decks, I mean, those decks are already pretty good, right? Living End doesn't really need it, and Rhinos also doesn't really need it. It's pretty rough to judge. I personally would definitely try it.
Mhm.
I wouldn't speculate that it's actually needed or that good. I'm overall very excited to play with it because I like more aggressively slanted decks, and like 2/2 haste that does something when it attacks is awesome and great. I'm very looking forward to it. But yeah, that's like the issue with that is dice to Doomblade, right? Or
That's fair.
and that's why I'm always very cautious about thinking a new card will be very good for a deck, because in the end it rarely is. But maybe there's a little hope for Layla. Yeah.
So in that case, if you're afraid of Doomblade, maybe Emrakul is actually turns out the better card to experiment with.
What's a good argument, I guess, is that, for example, against Living End, every deck just boards out targeted removal because you just try to interact with Living End, prevent it from being cast, interact with a graveyard, or just have a counterspell. And if there is actually a threat that basically needs to be handled because it grows even if your Living End is countered, and everybody boarded out their targeted removal, that's probably a nice angle. I could imagine that.
Oh, so you would see her as a sideboard card, maybe?
Yeah, I haven't really thought about Layla that much in the Cascade context
Mhm.
until now, and that's just what went through my mind basically. So I don't know if that actually holds up to something, but I could imagine maybe, yeah, hitting someone out of the blue is like, yeah, I just cast my creature and hit you, and now my creature is like gigantic. Go ahead, counter my Living End or Endurance my graveyard. Sounds actually interesting, at least.
Can't wait to see what people come up with that. I just think that this is a really neat card. Ryan, do you know anything about the story surrounding this card? Because as far as I'm aware, she was not part of like any of the main storylines.
You're correct. She's not featured in any of the main stories. She is a character from Arcavios, the plane for Strixhaven. She was a warrior who died in battle a long time ago, had a statue made of her, and the Lorehold students there can reanimate statues to talk to the spirit of the person they represent as part of their studies of history. And basically, she was put into this statue body and was really frustrated that she had died in her battle and is now motivated to like get vengeance. And that's why she's an aggressive red character, because she's a spirit who is still has some unfinished work to do, but that's not really relevant to the main story. It's just a fun side character from the studies at Strixhaven.
I love that though. I'm playing in a D&D campaign in the Strixhaven setting for that D&D brought out. So
Yeah.
I'm might run into her there.
There you go. That'd be a cool encounter. Yes.
I would actually like to know, so Kai, you play Legacy, right? And Layla is already Legacy legal. And for example, I think Rhinos exists in Legacy, right?
Yeah, it
Um,
does. Yeah, it does.
and does Layla see any play in Legacy at all, or in the Cascade decks?
Like I've only seen I've seen Lilia only in Vintage so far, but that's mainly because there are not that many Doomblades in Vintage, right? Like creatures basically, like, you know, people in Vintage, they fight over Ancestral Recalls and Black Lotus and I don't know, Necropotence and like all these ridiculous cards, and no one has time and the slots to deal with creatures, and that's why the creatures are just so powerful. Like Dark Confidant, for example, is a little bit of an oldie, obviously, but you know, cards like that, like they just stick around, you know, for a couple of turns, and Laelia is basically just that, right? Like it does add a lot of card advantage and does apply a lot of pressure. It's also super good at killing nasty planeswalkers, and the best planeswalkers do see a lot of play in Vintage as well. And in Legacy, I think the competition is a little harder because for 3 mana, you could also be casting a Show and Tell, for example, to put like something big into play, or you can do a lot of nasty things for 3 mana in Legacy. But in Vintage, 3 mana is really just it kind of feels like having costing like 1 or 2 mana, just because you have all these Moxen and you have Black Lotus, and also the hits are just so insane. Like you could flip it like a Time Walk, for example, you know, get like an extra turn after this, you know, just things can kind of go out of hand with this creature. But yeah, let's see. Like this card has a lot of potential, but it is, you know, but as I mentioned earlier, like the competition is so high, and like the cards that have been printed like last couple of years are so broken sometimes that yeah, it's tough.
I vividly remember one. I think it was a North America Eternal weekend where the Vintage Finals was decided by a 3/3 Elk Black Lotus from Oko swinging for lethal.
Legend.
Oh man.
So if that lives through the removal suite, then probably Lelia can.
Oh, definitely 100%.
Now, if
So-
I'm
so we
remembering the
discussed-
announcement correctly, I'm sorry, they did say that this set, in addition to being printed in paper for Modern, was coming to Arena as well, which means these cards are going to be legal in Timeless, which doesn't have quite the card pool as Legacy does. So maybe there's some interesting space in there for people who are looking to kind of build around this card in a more high-powered format, we'll say.
Yeah, the 100%. Like, the Timeless format also has a lot of cards that are on the Legacy banned list, right? So I wouldn't necessarily say that Timeless is strictly worse than Legacy. I would actually challenge that statement. And yeah, good point.
Yeah, because the cube brought all of the like Power 9 to Arena, right? So are those all in Timeless?
I'm not sure, because I don't think those Power 9 exist as individual cards in the client. You can't add them to your collection, but they exist because there is an alchemy card, Oracle of the Alpha, I think, who creates those and shuffles them into your deck. So they exist within like the game engine, but there's no way to like put Black Lotus into your deck because it doesn't exist as a card.
So
but it
I'm
can be
not
created
going.
by other.
At
I'm not
least
going to get.
It's not legal in Timeless, and I think Black Lotus is also not legal in Timeless.
And I was hoping to play Lelia off of Black Lotus on turn 1. Well.
So we discussed now nearly every of the cards, but what about a Psych Frog? Sorry. So now we're getting a new. Do we now getting after the nearly entire history of Magic the Gathering, where Artox are just dominating a couple of formats? So for the older players, there was a time that Artok and Psych Artok was, I think, in extended, Psych Artok was one of the most powerful cards ever existed. Still be playing in pre-modern, but more as a joke. And now we have a frog that it reminds me a lot of the mechanic of an Artok. So I like the design. I think it is a very well-designed card. And I think this can be powerful, because I think also about Black and Blue, discarding a card, put a 1/1 counter on Psych Frog. whenever these combat damage to a player or planeswalker, draw a card, what is also very powerful, and exile 3 cards from the graveyard, and he gets flying until end of turn. So this can be what was the black blue owl? Sometimes
Trick.
I'm missing words. Yeah.
Baleful
So or
Strix?
like the Baleful Strix. Thank you. Also, so it is not like similar to the card, but I can see decks where this is like the only one creature or one of the creatures similar. So maybe a mixed combination of newer and older ideas between. So this could be the center of like the creature you play, and your strategy with spells is all around it.
Could be,
What do you
or
think,
you
Katha?
might want. I think you want this guy and the new Emrakul, and then you can discard Emrakul, play it for its madness, and put a 1/1 counter on your frog.
That's sick.
I like the idea. I wonder maybe with like underground river or what it's called that can make both colors and colored mana. Maybe the six colorless and the double colored
Yeah.
causes would put me off that, but
Yeah, it's like a
Sure.
good triumph actually.
Eldrazi Triumph.
Yeah, like that.
So all payloads are already original as the first triumphs in Magic.
and they
So,
They
also.
enter untapped. They are even better than Triumphs, basically.
yeah.
But I
Yeah.
coming back to the frog, I actually really like the frog, and I think there will be it will be played in some games. So what I like about it, it draws a card when it connects, which means it has to be handled at some point. It can be an enabler for anything that basically wants to discard stuff. So there's a lot of Asmo shells that need to discard a card to get Asmo in play. And those decks are playing Dimir sometimes, so I've definitely seen Dimir Asmo. And I could imagine that basically having this as a discard outlet and something that draws card without you actually having to discard something. So you can just, if you manage to connect every turn, you just draw more cards than you have to discard, whereas some other cards that enable you to discard or that are discard enablers just discard a card, draw a card, but you're never getting card positive and can give it flying to just get through. I mean, some games are just won by combat damage in the end. So I actually like this card or can imagine it being played.
Yeah, definitely ticks a lot of boxes there.
But
That brings me also to the point.
is good, so
It brings me also to the point. So Asmo is a very powerful card that was also introduced in Modern Horizons, and with the Underworld Cookbook. And for me, so at the time I playing competitive Yu-Gi-Oh, there was a similar card. So it was 2009, 2008, something around that. And that was at that time one of the most powerful cards in the game. But I think the potential for Asmo in the future with cards like this or other discarding options. So maybe we have a discard theme in this set as well, because we have now the Frog, we have Emrakul. And I think Asmo is also Katha knows that, Kai maybe also. There's a couple of, so Asmo is a thing in Berlin and in the Berlin area. So there's a couple of players that loving to play Asmo, me as well. So with Asmo, I went on JK event in Frankfurt 3-1 with his 15 euro deck. That's the first time I met also the Berlin playing group in Frankfurt, by the way. And I think Asmo could be one of that cards who will win about price maybe and value because of this set. Could be a thing. So we know Modern Horizons 2 was ripped so often. So Modern Horizons 1 was more, so in our mind, like a limited set, and Modern Horizons 2 was printed for 2 years. And we also see now that we have a reprint of Ragavan as a promo, but that brings me to the next topic. What do you think will be this Modern Horizon 3 cards, or what cards will be shaking maybe up in value or going down in value? So what we already know, hey, fetch lands, original ones, will get down a little bit in price. Maybe the other ones will now go a little bit more back up, because if we look into the past, every time the other cycle comes, then everybody knows, okay, this is now the end for the other cycle. Maybe they go up in price, so like Verdant Catacomb and so on. So Kai, what do you think could be a winner, or what could be something that going up in price or maybe down about Modern Horizons 3, and why? What do you think about that? Is there anything that you have in mind?
Like, I'm typically terrible at prices. Like whenever I
That's why I
try,
ask you.
yeah, whenever I try to like, you know, come with like reasonable arguments for prices, I'm usually like on the losing end.
So what we already know, that Solitude, and this is the second topic that I want also to discuss with you all. So we're getting again that guest artist part. So if I'm reading it right, there was like 10 cards that will be getting a guest artist, or is it more? But we already get Modern Horizons 2 Solitude as a reprint. Do you think so? So Katha, do you think that the Modern Horizons 2 Elementals will be getting all a reprint, or do you said, hey, no, there will be just Solitude and maybe Endurance, and is there? So what is your thoughts on that idea to bring back over the guest artist, maybe also Ragavan? So what do you think? What do you hope for as well, maybe?
I think that they will print the whole cycle. It would be very weird to just print Solitude. I think they will also print Fury, because maybe Fury will get unbanned sometimes, or Fury is still played in other formats, so it would be very weird to leave it out. And yeah, I mean, there were cards from Modern Horizons 1 reprinted in Modern Horizons 2, right? So for example, the Force of Negation was from Modern Horizons 1 and was reprinted in 2, if I recall correctly. So I would assume that the most like iconic or meta-changing cards from Modern Horizons 2 will be in that slot.
Yeah, the
And
good thing is also that the artist card had another icon. It's also good that the Modern Horizons artist, also the guest artists have another icon, so nobody can say, yeah, but as Fury is in a modern set, I can play it in modern. So I think that make it to beside of modern. Just please go ahead. Sorry.
and so I think, for example, Ragavan was from Modern Horizons 1, right? I'm always pretty unsure what's from it, but I wouldn't expect anything from MH1 to be reprinted here, only MH2. But I have no. Oh, it's actually MH2. Then maybe they will even print a new Ragavan. Yeah, but I think they will put in quite a bit from that, like the last time, which is good because it probably will lower the price of those if they get a reprint that will be ripped often, and new artwork, so
Yeah.
you can decide which artwork you want. Now there are 2 full art artworks.
Yeah, there are definitely a bunch of cards from Modern Horizons 2 that I meant to get for my cube, but ended up deciding I might just not need them that much because just simply of the price. So I hope that the elementals will go down in price if we see them all again. Some of the fetch lands I really hope get some affordable foil versions. And one of the things that I wanted to get Brian's opinion on in terms of price is, do you think that because Emrakul is such an iconic character, that might affect her price just because people want her, for example, I don't know, to head up a colorless commander deck or something like that?
Yes, absolutely. All of the Eldrazi Titans historically have held very high price points, and I expect this version of Emrakul to be no different. I think she will be one of the more valuable cards out of this set. And while I can't speculate on what's getting reprinted, I would also look at anything colorless that lets you discard a card. So, like that Key to the City, Smuggler's Copter might go up because that's modern legal and it's colorless, and it would work in a shell to get Emrakul out on turn 6 if that's something people want to do. I expect people are going to want to not just try to build around this card because it's interesting and does something unique. They're going to want it for their collections, for their commander decks, for their cubes, because it's super powerful and cool and has that unique magic flavor to it that this game really excels at. So I think to answer your question, much less talkatively, she's going to be an expensive card and will be for a long time. Yes.
Also, what I often forgot in the past, that every set is normally created to play limited with it. So draft,
Yeah.
and I think also what you said about, hey, we have it getting cards to discard it, because it doesn't make sense to open an Emrakul and you have one
Right.
or two cards only in the whole cycle that discards the card. So now we know we have the frog in it. So I think also that madness could be a mechanic regularly in as one of that. That brings me also to the question, Dan, what is a very good opposite effect on the card, like, or mechanic, that you can see in Modern Horizon 3 to madness that would help for making a well-designed limited set? Because what I know, that you created a complete set by yourself with completely unique and self-written cards, and also you now for how many years you judging now? A couple of years.
Yeah, it
So
will be 9 years in a
yeah,
few months. So
yeah, as well, Katha also as a judge, but I think you two can. I think your both thoughts on what do you think. So starting with Dan, what do you think could be good mechanics to fit up with madness?
I mean, I'm not a huge limited player, so I don't know, Kata. If you play more limited, you might have a better feeling of what would complement the mechanics that we've seen so far.
I do play a lot, but I haven't played limited the last time Madness was in a set, so I'm just trying to think of if I remember if there were any mechanics in that set as well.
The only thing that I could think of, maybe, that naturally, if you're discarding a lot of cards, you definitely, there's two things that make sense with that to me. One is an effect that draws you extra cards. I believe the first or the last time Madness was in a set was the return to Innistrad, where we had some clue tokens as a mechanic. And we also saw that it was once again a graveyard set to give you something to do with all of the cards that you discard, for these discard effects that both enable madness and also enable your other graveyard mechanics. So those are the two main overlaps that I could see.
I mean,
Does that mean Delve could be too powerful? Sorry.
I think Delve as a named mechanic would probably be too powerful, but the frog kind of has a mini Delve on it, right? Because you can exile cards to give it flying, so you're more likely to hit and draw more cards. So little things like that let you use your graveyard as a resource without it necessarily being Delve explicitly. I think you'll see some of that appearing in this set as well.
Yeah, basically anything like flashback, jumpstart, for example, jumpstart actually then re-enabling the next madness card, because you can recard from the graveyard by discarding and then have your madness card and the jumpstart card. So basically any mechanic that works from the graveyard, or lets the spell be cast cheaper if you cast it from a graveyard, or has nice alternative cost from the graveyard and stuff like that. That all works nice with madness. And anything that basically makes the card still be live in a way and not just be discarded fodder.
Yeah.
Hi, what do you
Sounds good.
think would be a mechanic that you want to have back? So make a wish. What do you want to have back in Modern Horizon 3 as a mechanic?
Oh, like, I mean, people do like those graveyard recursion mechanics, right? Like, I think the first time when Madness was a thing, I think it was like a blue-green Madness deck with like Mild Mongrel, Basking Root Dweller. There were a lot of flashback cards, for example, like Roar of the Worm and Deep Analysis, like an iconic one, you know, things like that. I think Deep Analysis was like a key player in that deck back then, because it had flashback and it also refills your hand with more stuff. You know, that's like a really fun experience, like a fun gameplay experience, right, for most players. I think what you don't want to see is like a madness deck that just like runs out of the cards on turn 2, for example. Then you have like an empty hand versus your opponent, who's, you know, still like a 5 or 6 card hand, right?
I like what you mentioned there, because the card that the Psychic Frog was inspired by, Psychotog, kind of did have that problem that the discard only powered it up for a turn. And I like this change that they made here, that the that gives you some staying power from the cards that you discard. So even if you do run out with the frog, some of that value sticks around in the form of some +1/+1 counters.
Yeah, 100%. I think like also like the really old Psychotalk also used to sometimes like one-shot people just like out of nowhere because like you just so many cards and then you basically just just pump it up to like a 20/20 or something like that and then you just win the game in one swing. This same thing can also happen with Psychic Frog, right? Like just because its counters doesn't really mean that you have to attack 4 or 5 times. It can all be done in one swing if necessary. But with that being said, I think what I would really like to see in this set is like a somewhat of like a Dimir flashback card advantage mechanic maybe. It doesn't have to be crazy powerful, but something that's really like fun to play, especially in limited. And yeah, just keep the thing going.
One more thing that I'm really curious about before we wrap it up for today is the idea of Modern Horizons was originally to bring some of the cards into Modern that should not go through Standard, but have already seen print. And one of the really impactful cards that we've seen reprinted this way was Counterspell. Still being played a lot in the format. So what would be your choice or guess or wish for any cards that aren't currently legal in Modern, but that you think would make an interesting inclusion to be reprinted here?
I mean, like I'm gonna start with like a really bold one. Like since there is Counterspell and also Lightning Bolt, like I would like probably my favorite removal spell of all time is Swords to Plowshares, and that card is, I mean, it is the quote unquote best removal spell ever printed, I think, for creatures at least. And I mean, Counterspell and Swords to Plowshares in combination is such a beautiful combination. It's always been. So maybe that makes more people want to start Modern, maybe because it is such an iconic duo. But that being said, like it's also, maybe it's too powerful, but maybe it's all right, these days, because there are things like Solitude, which basically does the same thing, and people also do nasty things like Ephemerate on it, and get extra triggers and extra value. But yeah, something like that would be kind of cool.
I've definitely played my fair share of Swords to Plowshares and Counterspell decks. So that was absolutely my go-to when I used to play Legacy.
What about Days? I think too powerful, right?
Oh, Days is probably way too broken, yeah. Days is probably way too broken. But I would probably start to look at more like those iconic spells, right? Like the ones that were maybe printed in the very early sets, like in, I don't know, in alpha, beta, maybe.
Yeah, makes sense. Dark Ritual?
Oh, no, fast mana. I don't think fast mana would make the format any better.
Yeah.
Yeah, just kidding. So I think there was a lot of, so in the first Modern Horizon set and also in the second, there was a lot of cards that were from the, I would say, from Urza Saga and newer until Scourge. So we had like Spore Frog, we had a couple other things from that area that was very popular and extended. So maybe we're getting more extended cards back. So the buy a box promo for Modern Horizon 2 was the 1-mana counter spell with Storm. Wasn't it? It
Flusterstorm.
was. Yeah, Flusterstorm, exactly. So what about Stifle? Could Stifle be too powerful?
I mean, it's basically 1-mana Stone Rain. I don't know how this plays in Legacy. I mean, you fetch a lot of Legacy as well, right? And you can basically stifle. You go first, and you have a blue up for some reason, and you can always stifle your opponent's first land. Does that happen, or is that
Yeah, it happens every now and then. Also, like most creatures have somewhat like triggered or activated abilities. You can shuffle a lot of different things.
I mean, Tishana's Tidebinder sees play, and it's not oppressive in any way. And you can also stifle a fetch land for 3 mana and have a beater, and that's not a problem. So I'm unsure, but I could imagine that it feels miserable to play against.
What about the cards like last time Kai and I played Commander, we discussed about reanimator cards like Dance to Dead. So could be Dance to Dead a good fit for because it has only one print. It is a reanimator card. Maybe I don't think that we see reanimate or entomb because entomb was also in the Dominaria Remastered. So we know now about the print of Urza 2 times a year in 2 different sets. It's not a safe bet to say this card doesn't get a second reprint. So we got Reanimate in the commander deck of Lord of the Rings. But I think that Dance of the Dead could be a not too powerful Reanimate spell for Modern. Or is it too powerful because what you said before, like we have Glorious Vengeance with the Legendary and the -1/-1 non-legendary reanimated spell was also from Modern Horizons 1. Could be Dance of the Dead a good reprint, or is it too powerful?
Dance of the Dead is basically Animate Dead just with even more text, right?
Yeah, so
Pretty much.
simplifying that could be a thing.
It doesn't
Is Animate Dead is also not in Modern, so this could be also a thing.
I would rather want to say to see reanimate proper because I just want to see people take 12 to get Emrakul.
Yeah, so and then Death Shadow.
Then play Death Shadow.
It could be.
I mean that's definitely a legacy deck, right? You reanimate Death Shadow and all this troll and put in some big beaters just on turn 1 up.
That's literally the strongest deck right now. But like like maybe having some more like graveyard I don't know, like reanimation spells in Modern is maybe not the worst ever. Like I mean there are things like Living End already, and people have access to endurance and to more counters, and Flusterstorm's a thing, and maybe that makes it more interesting. Like it doesn't have it doesn't have to be reanimate, maybe the card reanimate, but it can be anything that costs 2 or 3 mana. I wouldn't say no to that.
Yeah, I think like again it's very, very hard to think about these things beforehand because usually it turns out to be different anyway, but I could imagine that that's a nice addition or it's a nice build around, especially if you have more options for reanimation that way, because either you have like this persist if you want to have low mana cost where you don't have legendaries as the option, or you have Glorious Vengeance where you basically need something with an ETB or an attack trigger because you have to exile it at end of turn, and just having a 2 mana unconditional reanimation could be fine. I mean, there is lots of graveyard hate anyway, and it's each color has access to deal with it in some way. Doesn't have to be right away, but I think.
Yeah, exactly. I think like the classic like reanimator is such an iconic archetype. It's always been like that. And I don't want to miss out on one of those like key play styles in an like now almost like eternal format such as Modern. It's crazy to say that, but like yeah.
What do you think, Ryan? Any favorites or guesses or wishes?
I mean, can I put in a vote for Mother of Runes? Like just a simple creature that can protect other creatures and kind of throw a wrench into combat and help you push through damage and get under the controls and the counter spells and all that. And I don't know, we have similar stuff, right? Like Skrelv or Giver of Runes, right? That's like similar. Yeah. But I just, like you mentioned before, Path and Swords and all the and Lightning Bolt and Counterspell and all the, it's the cheap stuff. It's the stuff you remember of slamming down on the kitchen table back then. And Mother of Runes comes from the same era of the game as Priest of Titania, I think, right? They're both Urza's Saga era, so that's not off the table. And I don't know, I like creature-based strategies. I like putting down a couple little things and then being like, all right, you got removal? You got 2 pieces of removal? Because mom is going to protect my Thalia or something, right? And now you're stacking up taxes on it. And that kind of just helps those small creature strategies survive against all the fatal pushes and the lightning bolts and all that kind of stuff. So I would put in a vote for something like that. That's just a nice simple card I remember playing with when I was a kid, and she's not in the modern format, but some of her cousins are. So I think we could support maybe one more, the definitive best one, and see what that does to shake things up.
Can I
So for Death in Texas, yeah,
can I
just go ahead.
question directly to Mother of Runes? Because I have never played with Mother of Runes, but I've often heard from people who have like experience in both formats that it feels better, or that Giver of Runes is basically the fixed version because she can't
Yeah,
protect herself. And is that something, or do you explicitly would like to have Mother of Runes because you like that she can protect herself as well? Or is that like, well, just another effect of that would be enough, but giving yourself protection is that something
that
explicitly
isn't.
like or not like?
Yeah, that is a nice upside, using her to protect herself, something I hadn't really considered. But at that point, you're protecting a 1/1, and maybe you made your opponent waste their removal spell. I don't know. I just thought maybe if there is a critical mass of this type of creature, it would enable more other creatures to survive without having an ETB or without failing the Doomblade test, right? Because so many creatures right now you can't use because of Doomblade or equivalent. And I feel like if we had just enough of those types of creatures, granted there is some difference between Giver and Mother, I understand that the edge case is there, but having access to 4 or 8 or 12 of those, does that then allow you to run 2 and 3 and 4 mana creatures that you can slam and then protect with a little bit of backup there without relying on hexproof or counter spells or something else? It might just kind of change the landscape just enough. So you bring up a good point about self protection or not, but I'm more thinking about, can we get enough of these dorks in a deck that lets me do something else cool with a different type of creature? That's as far as I went with it, but I don't play a lot of modern, so.
So
Yeah, well,
so I checked the just go ahead.
no, I just wanted to elaborate on thought once more that if you basically don't have double removal in hand against Mother of Runes, then she protects herself, and the next time you have removal, she protects herself again. Whereas with Giver, she always just takes a removal, but then it's gone. And I actually think it sounds better to me. But I agree that it would be nice to have like one more effect, and Skrelv doesn't give protection, so it's really not the same. So yeah, get that feeling as well. Yeah, go ahead.
So I checked a few of the cards that get reprinted from a maybe list from the first Modern Horizon set, where they announced, hey, we will bring not modern legal cards to modern. And one of the cards a lot of people don't think will come was Goblin Bombardment, what we already got in Modern Horizons 2. And there's 3 cards I want to discuss. Maybe it could be also our nearly of the end of this episode, but let's starting it with Port. Could this be a problem for Modern? Because then Death in Texas could be also one of the major decks. So Kai, you have a lot of experience about playing against Death in Texas if you're playing Legacy. Is it too powerful for Modern, or is it something that Wizards don't want because it slows down the gameplay?
I think the card is fine. You just use 2 of your lands to tap down one of your opponents. I think there's nothing wrong with that. It's pretty good if you have Aether Vial in play, obviously if you're ahead in the game. But I think it's a fair Magic card. It's good. I'd be happy to see it.
I think it might fall
Dan, you
into
agree?
some of the pitfalls that Katha mentioned about both Mother of Runes and Stifle earlier, in that it might create some play patterns that are just not super fun to play against, and that that Wizards has turned to fixing in recent sets. So I would not bet money on it, but we have seen a creature version of it in Modern Horizons 2, I want to say, that was a Merfolk. So they're definitely willing to put that kind of effect out there, maybe just not on a land.
The second one is something that I don't think this version of the card will come, so Entomb, but Buried Alive is something that needs a reprint. It is too expensive for a card that costs 3 mana and puts 3 creatures into the graveyard. So something around 6 to 7 euros, and I think in the States it's something around $11. So it's super expensive card. And I think it is a fair card because you're paying 3 to bring 3 creatures to the graveyard. Also, it could be good handled with Emrakul and maybe other cards to bring to the graveyard in limited. So, and I don't think it is an unfair modern card because 3 mana is fine for a spell that brings you. So we don't have Dark Ritual modern. So this is my wish list card. So I think nothing more to discuss. But the last card I want to discuss, and now I'm not 100% sure what. So Kai knows that card very well. But what about Natural Order? Is Natural Order too powerful? Katha, what do you think? So you look like that you say, no, I don't want Natural Order modern. I don't want to beat every time Crater of Behemoth.
Yeah, I don't know if Crater of Behemoth is basically what you will search with it, but yeah, again, I've never played with that card. I just watch some timeless content sometimes, and it does look very powerful. It does not look like I try to think about like what's the counterplay if I'm not in blue and can counter it. What will the opponent get there? And I mean, it probably would be fine, right? You pay 4 mana, you don't have the mana acceleration of Legacy where you can do it, or like of Timeless where you can do it very, very early in the game. You have to pay the 4 mana, right? There's nothing on here that says you can do it for an alternative cost for free.
No, but I was just saying that card actually makes all of the Arboreal Grazer decks even better because now you can sack your Arboreal Grazer either to get a free Cultivate that we've seen earlier to power out something like a Primeval Titan, or you just sack it to Natural Order to make your Titan cost only 4. So that's definitely a line that I could see there.
I was just thinking about a or something, but you're right. There are definitely decks who could abuse this too much. I don't want to be so negative and say to every card, "Oh no, that would be unfun. That would be too powerful." But some of the examples seem pretty powerful.
Yeah. So give me my bird alive. Don't give me Lotus Petal. No ever Lotus Petal in Modern, I would say. Maybe Wirewood Symbiont could be a thing also about the elf theme. No Dark Ritual, no Sylvan Library. I don't think that's maybe Sylvan Library, but
Please
I don't want
don't
to.
print Sylvan Library into any format that it doesn't need to be in. Just think of your judges. We don't need more Sylvan Library judge calls.
Yeah.
If you never had the experience of how that card plays in a tournament setting, consider yourself lucky. Is all I will say to that.
Okay, so if nobody has something to add to that, maybe a wish list or something, we would wrap this up. So firstly, I would say thank you to all being here. So also there was a few people jumping in and out on Twitch, and we know it's the first episode, so thank you to the audience. Yeah, I would also thank you for TCG Home who bring this vision, this idea to life, that we say, hey, we want to do that format. Can we do that? And I said, hey, why not? It's a cool idea. Bring people from all over TCG together. So if you want to check out TCG Home, go to tcg-home.com. It's a free online service where you can manage your cards. Also, Ryan did a few cool things with TCG Home in his videos, but yeah, we will give now in the end of every episode for the future a few minutes, everyone, to where we can find them in the future or where they're just what they are doing. And I would say, so as gentlemen, ladies first. So Katha, what's your next event or where we can find you in the Magic world?
Yeah, I'm going to be at basically every next event. I'm going to be at the LMS in Prague, then at the LMS in Bologna, and in Amsterdam as well. So you can basically find me at each bigger event.
And every time with a tribal deck, right?
Not anymore.
wait about Modern Horizon 3. Maybe there will be big changes.
I would like to have a playable shaman. That would be on my wish list, like a really good shaman with shaman travel payoff. That would be nice.
Yeah. So Ryan, where we can find you?
I have a YouTube channel called Magic Arcanum where we talk about the stories behind the cards, which can include the lore and the written, stories themselves, but also interesting decks or events or just crazy happenings that happen when you play a card game. Tomorrow, I think I'm going to be doing a little live stream myself. Normally, I do scripted stuff, but I'm trying to get more into like this podcast and live streams and whatnot. So tomorrow I want to show off a deck I'm working on that I am calling the Star Wars deck because it has a bunch of lightsabers in it, swords of whatever. And you use Kellen to kind of search them up out of your deck, and he's your Luke Skywalker, young farm boy, who goes and gets his lightsaber and then comes into play and gets to equip that. So it's kind of a red and white equipment deck that I've been brewing up on Arena. I'm going to show that off tomorrow, and this weekend I'm going to be playing at my local game store because it's the Star Wars Unlimited pre-release here. So I'm excited to jump into that and learn a whole nother card game, and maybe someday that will be on TCG Home. I don't know. But yeah, mostly we talk about Magic and Lorcana and some other stuff because I've got family and a daughter who likes to play those as well. So it all kind of creeps together over on Magic Arcanum on YouTube. Check it out.
Thank you. So that brings me to the point we should do an Elden Ring Dark Souls inspired deck maybe
Ooh.
to talk about. FromSoft deck. Yeah.
Okay.
You start the game, you died. So yeah. Kai, where can I find you?
Yeah.
What you doing next?
Yeah, so I'm Kai, aka Savatarix. I'm a Twitch streamer and also I paint art from player to player and make tokens. You can find me at Savatarix on all social media platforms, mainly Twitter and Instagram, and also on savatarix.com. And I also try to be on as many events as possible. Definitely be in Amsterdam this year, and let's see about the future. And you also definitely gotta check out the streams at twitch.tv/Savatarix, where I usually stream either modern or legacy, or sometimes vintage.
And also sometimes in the TCG Home videos
Yep.
as my co-host.
That creepy guy, yeah.
Yeah, that creepy guy. Me or you? We let decide the audience who is the creepy guy, or maybe we are both. Dan, where we can find you?
Well, I'm mostly traveling the world as a judge these days. I'm at most of the bigger Magic events. If you've been to European Regional Championship or MagicCon, you've probably seen me there. I was just in Chicago this weekend, and I'm definitely going to be at MagicCon Amsterdam, and hopefully many future MagicCons after that. Can't make it to the Regional Championship for Europe this round, but I'm definitely trying to be back for the next rounds. So yeah, that's where you can find me.
Yeah, and I wrapped this up. So I'm Patrick. I'm also doing a few financial and business things over in German, the Spielwaren Investor podcast. Also on Omega Sabatzo, what is my just social and like my YouTube channel. And yeah, for sure, I'm going to a lot of events as well. So Amsterdam is a thing. And I have also to go back to a few of the Berlin stores like Spielfilmmusik, where it's a very, very great store to play. Also like Brettspielplatz. So German names are very beautiful, right? And yeah, also you can find me on the socials of TCG Home. And that's it for the first episode. I'm super thankful for having the chance to do this because this was a long created idea. And I think for the first episode, we had a great discussion. Thank you, Katha. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Kai. Thank you, Dan. And yeah, let's see who will be in the next episodes because we will do a floating roster. So that means not everybody who's today here is the next episode, but maybe we'll come back in a future episode. So follow us on all socials and yeah, Instagram, X. What we have also.
Discord.
Do we have Facebook? Discord. Just joining our Discord community. And also, thank you for everyone. Also Kai, who makes the technical side today. And our audience. Thank you very much. See you next time. Bye.
It's great fun.